We're now joined by Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network national show. Just finished it. Joins us on 365 Sports. You heard us, Zach, digesting or trying to the Big 12. It's not always easy to do, but it appears as if there's separation, not quite enough to like these guys are going to play for the Big 12 title, but there is separation.
I think it's been a fun watch. It's like, here's what I wonder. Is there a chance the Big 12 gets two teams in the college football playoff? I lean so more no than yes, and I still think only one gets in. But, like, let's say if you have one of those undefeated teams, you know, with how people play against each other and don't, you know, one of them is undefeated going into the Big 12 title game, and then let's say they lose the Big 12 title game by, like, a field goal or, like, a point. Is the committee then going to keep that team out after suffering their first loss on the season? Then I would say no. So that's really the only path I think two Big 12 teams do get in. Before the year, I picked Kansas State, so I'm not going to back off that now. But the Big 12, it's like it hasn't been great, but it's been good, and it's been a fun, enjoyable watch this year.
What is your opinion on the ACC by that same token? Because they've got, I mean, look, they're probably the league that's most likely to have a weird tiebreaker scenario as it plays out right now.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 is better from top to bottom than the ACC. But, like, Pitt's having an unbelievable season. They're undefeated. We know Clemson had that one loss to Georgia, but they haven't lost the game since. Miami has Cam Ward. So I guess it's possible what I'm saying as well, to happen in the ACC. But I would think that from top to bottom, the Big 12, to me, is a better conference, and I view them as a better conference than what the ACC has right now.
Zach, looking back at last week a little bit, what did you think of Pittsburgh and that mauling of Kyle McCord and Syracuse? I mean, the odds of having that many interceptions and that many pick sixes are so low, but man, oh man, for a game that was, really anticipated, that turned into an absolute bloodbath.
I had Pat Narduzzi on the show the next day, and I said, Coach, wonderful performance, but I'm actually disappointed because I thought that was going to be an excellent game, and I've never seen, like, it's one thing a quarterback throws 5 interceptions, but at halftime to have 4 picks and 3 of them be pick sixes, I've never seen anything like that. It was one of the more impressive performances that I've ever seen by Kyle McCord, and I don't mean that in a positive way, but that is maybe the worst quarterback performance I've ever seen out of an individual.
Yeah, and I hate that because otherwise it's been a pretty good year for him, right? Yeah.
And he's someone that's easy to root for because even though I didn't think he was going to beat Michigan last year, he was probably better than going to just Syracuse. And I know Syracuse of Fran Brown, right? A lot of recruits they get that they probably shouldn't be getting, and it's because of Fran Brown and also Elijah Robinson, a few others on that staff. But, it's a shame that that's the isolated spot what people are going to remember Kyle McCord for, because you're right, Smokey, it's a good job out of you. He has played well this year up until that point.
You mentioned Fran Brown and, of course, Elijah, but, we got to know him here at Baylor. You got to know him at Temple. I thought there was a moment when McCord threw like his third pick, whatever it was, and he grabbed him but he met him on the sideline. He goes, I believe in you. I'm not turning my back on you. Whatever he said, I just thought that was a really cool moment.
It was. I was shocked, though, that they didn't sit him down.
Yeah, no, it was bad. He was, I thought that's one of those you turn your back and start wondering who your second, third, and fourth string quarterbacks are.
Like, honestly, it would have been more of a favor to him if they would have pulled him just because it was just a comedy show, for being honest.
Yeah, could have thrown in the white towel. It was bad. We're talking to Zach Gelb with us on Wednesdays in the 5 o'clock hour on 365 Sports.
Zach, is this the time that James Franklin gets over the hump, beats an elite team, and warns the world, here come the Nittany Lions?
I'm going to be honest, I hate both of these coaches. I just can't stand them. You asking me this, like, would you rather see James Franklin or Ryan Day win? It's like, which disease would you rather get diagnosed with? These are two of the more insufferable coaches in college football. They are two fake tough guys. I guess I despise James Franklin more than I do Ryan Day. Like, Ryan Day just thinks he's cool, and he's not. I just think James Franklin is a jerk. But with that being said, if you can't tell how I really feel about this game, I do believe Ohio State's going to win. Ohio State has not shown me this year that they are great, considering what Tressel and Urban Meyer made it seem like this roster is. They got talent, but that game up against Oregon down the stretch was embarrassing. They almost lost to Nebraska last week, but I think this game means more to Ohio State because of the fact they already had that one loss. Penn State loses this game, they probably still get in the college football playoff, but you get to 2 losses, you then start to get in that line of, hey, you're really close to be getting left out of the college football playoff, even with the parity this year.
Yeah, and or the name on the jersey, right? Ohio State or whoever. I was stunned last week. One, they jumped out, looked like they're going to separate and win 37-10. They could not run the ball when they needed to run the ball. Now, Nebraska's defense is pretty good. Otherwise, Indiana would disagree. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised they weren't able to push anybody around last week against Nebraska.
It was stunning. And I give credit to Matt because your team got embarrassed and his team got off the mat. And if that team is maybe playing next year, they probably do win that game. And hey, Nebraska made some mistakes in that contest as well. But that was an Ohio State team that they just did not look like they had a killer instinct, even though I think they're going to win this week up against Penn State. And I think it's going to be by 4 points or, maybe 7, 24-20, 27-20. We don't know the injury status of Drew Aller as well. But that Ohio State team, they keep on telling you, hey, we're great. Hey, we're unbelievable. And they haven't won the Big Ten championship in the last 3 years. They haven't beat Michigan in the last 3 years. So they have, even though the record still looks great each and every year, they've taken a hit from where they were under the great Urban Meyer.
Zach, what do you think the highest hurdle that Ryan Day has to cross to make sure he keeps his job? Because they almost lost to Nebraska. But again, Indiana coming up, I don't know, that's Indiana's biggest test. They could lose in the first round of the playoffs. Would that make the Ohio State fans mad enough? Because they've been very vocal about how much money they spent on the roster this year. I think it's $20 million. They kept saying it. For them to say, okay, this is just not working out, let's go get somebody else.
And I know Indiana has the quarterback issue, and that game's not played tomorrow. In a few weeks from now, maybe I'll change my tune. If that game was played tomorrow, I'd pick Indiana to win, just because I think they're a mentally tougher football team. But to answer your question, he has to beat Michigan this year. That's the only way I see him getting fired, because people in the Ohio State community would be like, oh, if you want to get rid of Ryan Day, who else are you bringing in? So he has to beat Michigan, especially with how dysfunctional Michigan looks on the offensive side of the ball. But for me, they were a championship or bust team entering this year. Now, I say that I don't think he's getting fired if they make the college football playoff and they beat Michigan. But if you can't beat Michigan this year, what leg does he have to stand on when Michigan could throw Smokey at quarterback and they may be able to move the ball, quite frankly, a little bit better than what they have right now?
Zach, we're getting into that time period where we're going to see some of these late SEC non-con matchups. You got Mississippi State's playing UMass, Oklahoma's playing Maine, and we know they play one less conference game. And the argument's well, they're so good that they don't have to play as many. Where do you stand on the uneven number of power conference games and the late in the year kind of bye week with the buy-in game, so to speak, that the SEC features as much or more than anybody else?
I get why they do it. They could say whatever they want. I understand why they do it. With that being said, now since it's not only 4 teams going into the college football playoff, it's 12. I would like to hope that in the future down the road, they don't schedule those games. But am I going to expect some big seismic shift? No, because you still want to provide a cushion in there at the end of the season going through the rigorous schedule of the SEC. So, is it enjoyable for me, the consumer? No, but I understand why the schools do it and they schedule it.
What were your thoughts as a Mets fan of the Yankees fans trying to take Mookie Betts' glove, arm, wrist, and everything else off last night?
I laughed. Don't get me wrong. If he got hurt, it would be terrible.
Yeah,
I'm not saying what those fans did was correct, but the fact he didn't get hurt. And this World Series has been rather boring if you don't have a dog in the fight with what it was built up to be. I thought it was actually a moment where in society now, you either have to be right or wrong. And if you're wrong, like everyone goes after you. And so many people on Twitter are like, oh, why are anyone glorifying these two jackasses? Like, whatever. If you're sitting there watching that and you can't laugh at it, knowing that no harm happened, I just think you're living a life on like kind of a throne of lies, if I'm being honest.
Look, I'm not on the, like, I didn't go on Twitter and say anything about it, but as a Red Sox fan, I'm here for protection of Mookie, even though, because it's not his fault he's in LA.
Yeah, you hate the owners.
Oh yeah, it's the owners that sent him to LA. So I was mad about that. I just think that like it's just kind of stupid. Like, why would you do that? And the Yankees do kind of have this bit of until like since Jeffrey Mayer, like they kind of think like this is something we should do.
I think the fans were playing a little defense, as the one guy did say. But they're the stereotypical Yankee fan. Like, from an entertainment standpoint, if you ask me, and I live in New York, right? I grew up around a ton of Yankee fans as a Met fan. If you asked me to draw up a stereotypical Yankee fan, it would be that guy last night, larger fellow, right, with the ball cap on, looking like he's had a few too many and doing whatever it takes for his baseball team.
Zach, speaking of New York, what is the mood with the Giants and the Jets in a mess?
It's not even November, Smokey. You knew the Giants were going to stink before the season. The Jets are an unmitigated disaster. That defense is overrated. They got rid of Saleh, who's not a good head coach, and they got worse. Aaron Rodgers looking like a 40-year-old quarterback playing on one leg. That offensive line's problematic. Breece Hall's not having a good season. Garrett Wilson has 2 1,000-yard seasons with no name throwing the ball. Now he gets Aaron Rodgers. They can't get on the same page. This is on Woody Johnson, and it's on Aaron Rodgers. And this partnership has been an unmitigated disaster. But since the Jets operate their organization kind of like how the Cowboys do, where it's all about the headlines, it's all about the drama, and it's not the wins and the losses, I would not be surprised if Aaron Rodgers, who has another year left on his contract, is back under center next year, and the Jets were sitting here talking to you October of next year, and they're once again one of the biggest jokes in all the NFL.
Zach, who do you think the Cowboys' next head coach will be? Because it's not. I mean, next year's not going to be Mike McCarthy. The Jones, and he's got 12 wins 3 years in a row, but the Jones family essentially pulled the rug out from under him by saying, hey, we're not going to improve the roster.
Yeah. I think it's Belichick right now. I think Jerry would get out of the way like he did for Parcells, and that would be having an expiration date. I think Belichick wants the Eagles job, and I don't think Nick Sirianni is someone that wins you a Super Bowl. So if I'm Bill, I would go to Philly. If I'm Philly, I would hire Bill, but I don't know if Philly's going to move on necessarily from Nick Sirianni. So if you made me take a guess today, I would say Belichick. And if not Belichick, I don't think Ben Johnson is going to go take the Cowboys job. So then I would say Mike Vrabel. I would go Belichick 1, Vrabel 2.
Vrabel, I forgot he's out there, isn't he? He's
a consultant on the Browns staff, one of those capacity roles with the Cleveland Browns.
What are your thoughts? You mentioned Jerry, Paul, and obviously it looked like they had the good game plan. They had enough energy to take on San Francisco, who also is battling injuries with Ayuk out. And they that game Sunday night, that was a game Dallas had a chance to win when they cannot beat San Francisco. That's been their 800-pound gorilla. What do you see with either one of those teams?
So I call them the drama Dallas choking Cowboys. So that tells me what I view of the Cowboys. And I said before the Cowboys were going to miss the playoffs. With that being said, in a moment of weakness, in a moment of me being stupid, I actually gave the Cowboys the benefit of the doubt. I thought they were going to win the game. I really did. I just thought the timing was right with all the injuries that you mentioned. I know the Cowboys have been banged up, but the injuries were a bigger storyline for the 49ers. They had a good start, and then they allowed, 24 unanswered or whatever it was, and then they got back in the game. So it was the ultimate tease. Like, hey, we'll tease you from the start, then we'll get railroaded, then we'll tease you and get you back in the game like they did up against the Baltimore Ravens. But then when the game was on the line, your big-time quarterback should have been intercepted on the first throw that he threw when you're paying him that much money. Mm-hmm. So I think this team doesn't believe in the coach. The quarterback is good, but he's not great. And when he has to be clutch, he can't be clutch. And you mentioned it. The biggest problem is Jerry Jones all in. Skip Bayless said it, all in, pause, my ass is what he tweeted out there. This owner right now, he did not put together a football team that is good enough to go on out there, in my opinion, to make the playoffs and beat a team. I know they're not elite this year because they have problems with the 49ers, but they're perceived to be on paper one of the more talented teams in the league.
Zach, thank you. As always, buddy. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Matt and the Huskers looked like they had a chance. You and I texted each other that afternoon, and then, damn it, they couldn't close. They couldn't close.
Smoky Saturdays. I feel like we've been texting a lot on Saturdays, and we got a little insight on whatever college game is annoying us.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach, thank you, buddy. Infinity Sports Network, good friend of the show.